Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto Uzumaki is an outcast to his family. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. I curled myself tighter into a ball, hoping to avoid the blows that continued to rain down on me. When they suddenly stopped, I slowly looked up to see a strange person in a black cloak, his back towards me. It looked like they were arguing, but I couldn't tell due to the ringing in my ears from the beating. Then a loud shout broke through the ringing. Plus, Shinigami style. Soul Leech Jutsu. All of a sudden, the entirety of the crowd suddenly collapsed, with what looked like yellow clouds flowing out of them. The cloaked man then turned to me, and removed his hood, revealing short, black hair and blue eyes. "Are you alright, child?" the man asked while crouching down to my height and offering his hand. "Stay away," I feebly cried, backing farther into the counter. The man sighed and sat down, crossing his legs. "Don't worry, kid," I heard Kura-ni say. "Kura-ni? What do you mean?" I asked, still skeptical. "This man reeks of death." "Yes, but he seems to be sincere in protecting you. See if you can get his name. I knew a few people that felt like him." "Okay." I slowly looked in the alley, seeing him still there, waiting. Thank you," I feebly said. The man chuckled, not a dark chuckle but a genuine one. "It's fine, you needed help. Who am I to leave a child to be beaten?" the man said, pulling out what looked like a personal medkit. "While I never need this, I always carry it. Come over here and I'll treat your wounds." He said. Sure," I said, crawling over and sitting in front of him. He then proceeded to remove my jacket and start treating my bruises, cuts, and burns. It stung a little, but I knew that it saved me from much more pain later, even with Kura-ni in me. "The name is Tanawa von Karstein," he stated after he finished patching me up. Karstein. I thought they were all dead. Kurama shouted in my mind, giving me a small headache and causing me to flinch. Thankfully it looked like Tanawa didn't notice. "What's your name, kid?" Tanawa asked, putting the medkit back in his cloak and grabbing his staff. "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," I said, saying the Namikaze with venom. "Namikaze? Why are you getting chased by those villagers?" he asks. "Because I'm the demon child," I spat out. Tanawa growled, his fists clenching around his staff. "How dare he? The nerve of him!" He shouted. "Your father invited me here for an alliance. Now that is never happening. Grab whatever you want to take with you. I'm getting you away from here. If there's one thing I hate more than a liar, it's a person who betrays their own kin." 37. I was ecstatic. I would finally be able to leave my family and start a new life. "Do it, kid. I always trusted them with my life. They were, some of the greatest ninjas. You can get away from here, and by how he was treating you, get trained by possibly the last of the Karsteins." "Absolutely," I cried happily. "Can you train me to be a shinobi?" Tanawa smiled hearing that. "Kid, I'll make you one of the best, equal to my great-grandfather, Manfred von Karstein. I'll start teaching you on the way there, my son." At those words he stood, a smile on his face. "Now, go and get your stuff, I'll be there in a few minutes," Tanawa said before disappearing in a cloud of bats, one of which perched on my shoulder, as if to look after me. "Thank you," I whispered, then sprinted off to grab the two precious things I had. Time skip to Namikaze estate. I snuck up to my room, being careful to avoid my siblings. I couldn't let them stop me from leaving this place. I managed to get to my room without incident. I moved aside my bedroll and lifted up a loose floorboard and grabbed two things. The only present I ever got, a green crystal necklace from my Ba-chan, Tsunade. She saw past my status as Jinchuriki and saw that I was just a child and gave me the necklace before she left Konoha. As well as the only thing I got from the man who sacrificed his life for mine, and the villages. A wooden pipe, smelling faintly of tobacco. Kura-ni said that he was the only human that he had respect for in this kami-forsaken village. He was the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. I grabbed them both, putting on the necklace, feeling the calming aura it gave off, and putting the pipe in my inside shirt pocket. Meanwhile, Hokage Tower Tanawa Pav. As I appeared in the Hokage Akuma, demon's office, I was immediately greeted with a tri-pronged kunai at my throat. "Who are you?" Minato demanded. I chuckled. "How clueless. The man that is here to give you my decision on your offer," I said, purposely emphasizing the "my" in the sentence. The kunai was immediately removed from its location near my throat and Minato walked and sat down in the chair behind his desk. "My apologies," he said as he sat down. "So, what is your answer count?" he asked. I inwardly smirked in amusement. He honestly thinks that I'll say yes? Maybe before but not now. Sadly, my shinobi council has voted that it would be better to not acquire ties with Konoha. I decided to come and tell you in person since I was passing by anyway. I replied, making it clear that the alliance was now out of reach. "Well, thanks for coming in person to tell me at least," he said, disappointed. "Will you stay the night? I can arrange for you to stay at my estate." I shook my head. Tempting, but I must decline. I have to get back to Draenhoff by tomorrow. So I must leave immediately after this. "Alright, send me a message if your council reconsiders," Minato says. "Fat chance I think." "Sure thing," I say. "Have a good day Hokage Dono." I then proceeded to disappear in my cloud of bats and shunshin to the north gate. The north gate. I appeared just inside the gate and looked around, spotting Naruto leaning against one of its pillars. "Ready to go?" I asked, seeing no bags or anything except for a necklace around his neck and the faint scent of tobacco. "Yeah, this is all worth keeping on me," Naruto said. "That will all change soon, and you will have much more worth keeping." I said, "I'm going to cast a high-level genjutsu on you so that you will appear to be my son, so you're going to have to act like I'm your father," I say while casting the genjutsu. Shinigami style. Mirage of the Veil. When the genjutsu took effect, Naruto's hair shortened and became straighter, partly covering his left eye, and his face took a thinner build and a slightly darker skin tone. His whisker marks also disappeared. His clothes were replaced by a long, black cloak and a black formal kimono, similar to the one on Tanawa. They then started walking over to the guardhouse on the outside of the gate. "Papers?" the guard asked, sounding bored. "1. Here you go." I gave him my passport and papers allowing me diplomatic immunity, as well as whoever is traveling with me, so I didn't have to forge papers for Naruto. The guard looked them over. When he saw the name on the papers and the stamp stating me and my entourage's immunity to diplomatic borders, he immediately returned the papers. "Sorry for the inconvenience, Count Karstein," the guard said as he returned the papers, not sparing a glance at the disguised Naruto next to Tanawa. The genjutsu doing its job of making people assume he's Tanawa's son. 1. Carry on, have a good day, I said walking off away from the gate. Once out of sight, I dropped the genjutsu, making Naruto appear normal again. "Thank you so much," Naruto cried, hugging Tanawa, who was smiling. "No, thank you. What do you say I make you my son officially when we get back home?" I asked, hoisting Naruto up onto my shoulders. 1. Really? How? Naruto exclaimed. "Simple Kit, a special ritual called the bloodbinding. It allows one to inherit traits from another's family. The Karsteins were famous for it. At one point they could have claimed strength equal to one of the 5 great nations." Kurama explained. 7. They were that powerful? Naruto questioned. "They had more than enough power to do so, yes," Kurama answered. "I'll perform the ritual when we get to Draenhoff." Tanawa finished explaining while Naruto was talking with Kurama. "For now, let's just enjoy this time till then and do some basic lessons. I will eventually start to teach you spirit-raising and Shinigami-style jutsu, but only after you get the basics of chakra and chakra control. Then you'll get to meet Shinigami-san. He's actually a very nice guy when you get to know him." The day was young. Tanawa had walked the entire night, carrying the sleeping Naruto on his back. He was currently thinking about how Naruto was spacing off during the walk earlier. What drew his attention away? He doesn't have any sort of attention deficiency, I know that for certain. He was asking all about bloodbinding before he got tired. The only people who do that very often for no reason are Jinchuriki. It would explain why he said he was considered the demon child. I should take a peek in his mindscape anyway. I need to see if he has a strong connection to the dead or of something similar. Tanawa decided that he would go and take a walk around Naruto's mindscape. Not only would it show his connection to the dead, it would also tell him if Naruto was a Jinchuriki. Shinigami style. Veil walking jutsu. Tanawa said softly after he set up multiple seals to alert him if people came close. As soon as Tanawa entered Naruto's mind, he frowned. It was a sewer. "Just how bad was the villagers' treatment to you, Naruto?" Tanawa asked, not expecting to hear a response. "My kid had it worse than you could ever imagine," the Kyuubi rumbled. His voice magnified by the walls of the sewer. He was beaten, banned from stores, shunned by other children. The only ones who cared for him were 5 people. 2 of which were so busy they could barely see him. 1 left that wretched village years ago, so only 2 people saw him on nice terms daily. Thank you for protecting both me and my kit, von Karstein. To say Tanawa was shocked would be an understatement. Here was the Kyuubi, the tailed beast that his family had aided many years ago, right in front of him. He looked up at the Kyuubi as the words he said registered in Tanawa's mind. He growled, then sighed. Kurama, I thought you were gone after Madara kidnapped you to fight Hashirama. At least you are still alive. The least I can do is help you, and Naruto, have a better life. Maybe even find a way to get you free of this seal. Tanawa then looked Kurama straight in the eyes. I'm assuming you can guess what I'm here to gauge in Naruto? Tanawa asked respectfully. Kurama chuckled, that I do. Karstein, that I do. Let me show you. He has the closest affinity to the dead and supernatural that I have seen since your great-grandfather walked the realm of man. Let me show you, Kurama said, looking towards what looked to be a pane of glass next to him. Suddenly the glass shined brightly, showing the Kia stone, as well as faint apparitions of ghosts appearing around it. All wore Konoha headbands, many of them seemed to embrace Naruto's figure. He acted very calm around them. The lack of affection from his family making the spirits' hugs seem real. Amazing, Tanawa whispered, seeing all the spirits around Naruto. He looked to Kurama. Could he see all of them? Could he interact with them? He asked. Kurama nodded, correct. Watch what he could do with them. The picture then changed to that of Naruto being chased, passing by the stone. The spirits seemed to put themselves between the crowd and Naruto, their ethereal bodies making a fog barrier. Out of the barrier came a leaf shinobi in white clothing and gravity-defying hair. Guess who it is yet? The shinobi carried a katana and had a suicide wound on him, causing many of the shinobi and some of the civilians to cry out. Standing before them was the supposedly dead Tsukumo Hitaki, the White Fang of Konoha. First they take my honor for saving a comrade, now they persecute a child for something he has no control over. This is not the Konoha I know, and all of you better start begging Kami for mercy, because I won't give you any. The spirit shouted, his hollow voice terrifying the civilians, many trying to run, only to be stopped by an invisible barrier. Tsukumo's spirit then proceeded to slaughter the mob, any weapons or jutsu going straight through him. It was over in a mere 5 minutes. The fog then disappeared along with the bloodbath, leaving no clue or evidence to the massacre other than a strip of white cloth around the Kia stone. Tanawa stepped backwards surprised, then rapidly regained his composure. How the, not even I was able to summon someone like Tsukumo at such a young age. Is there any other events that happened after this? The Kyuubi chuckled at Tanawa's reaction, then started thinking. There is one more occasion that something similar happened, but you would have to ask my kid himself. He told me not to talk about it unless he said it was fine with him. Tanawa nodded, deciding to respect Naruto's privacy, to each man their own as they say. He thought. He then turned to Kurama and asked him a question. If you don't mind, can you tell him what happened in his mind when he is awake? I think it would be better for you to tell him that I went looking around his memories instead of me. You would probably be able to word it better than I. Kurama nodded, then proceeded to put his head on his paws and take a nap. Tanawa chuckled at seeing this old habit of his. Old habits die hard, huh? Nice to see that time hasn't changed Kurama in the slightest. Tanawa smiled, a genuine smile, contradictory to his skills as a ninja and as a spirit raiser. He then left Naruto's mind and looked at the sky, seeing that dawn had passed and that it was now early afternoon, and sighed. Naruto, my son, you have a long road ahead of you, but I will be damned if I can't help make that road smoother for you. Tanawa then jerked his head to a tree nearby to see a crow, staring at him, with beady, Sharingan eyes. Tanawa then held out his arm for the crow, inviting it to perch on it. The crow landed on his wrist, it then nipped at his earlobe, causing Tanawa to chuckle. Don't worry your little head, I will protect him as best I can. I will pick up where you left off and raise him as he should have been, so don't worry one of your feathers, Itachi Uchiha. The crow cawed, then flew off, seemingly satisfied with Tanawa's statement, disappearing off into the horizon. Kit, Kura ni yelled in my mind. What Kura ni? I asked, my thoughts slurring due to my tiredness. Wake up. Tanawa is trying to wake you up. and I want to tell you something when you're fully awake." "Finn," I groaned as I rolled over and opened my eyes, feeling exhausted. The first thing I saw was the sight of Tanawa unsealing a cup of coffee. Smelling the coffee, I slowly get up and tiredly glomp him, causing him to chuckle and then sigh as some of his coffee spills out. "It's nice to see that you're finally awake, you slept like the dead. We're about a half hour from Draenhoff, then we can induct you as my son. We will also introduce you to the village as my heir to the countship." I merely gave a tired groan and nodded, still not entirely awake. I then looked at the coffee in Tanawa's hand. He noticed my look and chuckled, holding the warm cup up to my mouth as my eyes lit up. "Tired, huh? Don't worry, it happens to everyone. I'm just used to staying up for days at a time." I gulped down a good portion of the beverage greedily, my body craving the energy. I immediately felt woken up but strangely not hyper. I must have put a look on my face, because Tanawa immediately answered my mental question. "It's home brewed, I made it so that it would make me alert, without making me hyper or have a caffeine crash. It's very useful for when I'm in council meetings and whatnot." Tanawa then got up, with me still on his back, apparently having finished the coffee. "Alright, you're awake now. Remember how I said that the Karsteins were my guardians? Well, Tanawa knows that I'm in you." "What? Calm down." He already had suspicions, it was just by chance that he ran across me while looking to see your affinity towards the dead. "How'd he do that?" "I may have shown him some chosen scenes from your memories." "Before you ask, no, I did not show him that memory. While I'm mad that you went into my memories and showed them to him, I can at least stay calm since you didn't show him that memory." "Talking to Kurama-sama, huh?" said a voice I recognized as Tanawa's. He must have noticed me space out. Why yeah," I said, still nervous that he knew. Tanawa chuckled, and was about to say something before we saw some spires on the horizon. "Ah, we must have passed the barrier without me noticing. That's good, if I can't notice it, then there are very few who will." As we reached the gates of the city, I saw just how immense the city's gate actually was. It was so big you could probably fit the Hokage tower under it. As soon as we entered, I was blown away by the design of the buildings. All of them had a very creepy feel, but they all felt welcoming to me and seemed to radiate an aura of power that had to be respected. All these buildings are in the original design of Draenhoff. The city itself is actually located on the ruins of the old Draenhoff, which was destroyed near the time of the Sage of the Six Paths' birth. I was looking at the buildings in awe of them. The way they were designed seemed to make them each unique, but seemed to flow together. I couldn't help but feel at home, in a place where I belonged. "Let's head to my estate in the center of the village. There I will show you to your room and start preparing for the ritual." There are 4 tiers to Draenhoff. The Plaza, Market District, containing many civilian stores and parks, the Civilian District, which contains all civilian residences and some civilian stores, the Ninja District, containing ninja equipment stores, the Academy, and ninja residences, and the Citadel, which contains all of the core government buildings like the T&I Department, Anbu Headquarters, and Council Building. It also contains the famous Draenhoff Cemetery, the biggest and safest graveyard in all of the nations. My estate is at the center of the entire city. It is also the tallest building in Draenhoff. True enough, when I looked up the city, there was a large castle dominating the skyline, and watching over the large city. "Why do you have separate areas for ninjas and civilians? Why not have them together?" Tanawa chuckled. "All will be explained soon, my son, but first, let me show you to our house and get you changed into some clothes fitting for the heir count of Draenhoff." With that, Tanawa started walking through the large city, receiving many greetings from the citizens of Draenhoff. He also got many salutes and signs of respect from the guards and ninjas. Soon we reached his estate, well more like castle, and he made a weird hand sign. Spirit-raising style. Loyal butler of the Karsteins. Narrator's POV. Suddenly, a man in a black suit with a tailcoat appeared. He was a tall and old figure, seeming to be as wise as his appearance suggested. He gave a deep bow upon appearing and welcomed Tanawa, seemingly not noticing Naruto on Tanawa's back. "Welcome back, sir. What is it you'd have me do, sir?" the man asked. "It's nice to be back, thank you, Walter." Tanawa answered while adjusting his hold on Naruto. "Can you take Naruto up to the master bedroom next to mine and help him get prepared for a bloodbinding ritual tomorrow? He is to be made my son at midnight." "Of course, sir." The butler, now identified as Walter, replied. He then gestured for Naruto to follow him. "Follow me, my young lord." Naruto's pav. I looked at Tanawa, who had taken me off of his back and set me on the floor. When he nodded in confirmation, I started following Walter. While we were walking, I decided to ask him some questions. "Walter?" I asked. "Yes, my young lord," was the reply. "How long have you served father's family?" I asked, already comfortable with calling Tanawa father. "I have served the Karstein family for many generations. I have stood by them through both their darkest hours and their brightest moments. I believe that your adoption by my master, however, is one of the later. You see, my count has been lonely for quite some time, having sworn never to remarry after his bride-to-be died during childbirth." Walter grinned and had a grateful look on his face. "I can tell that he thinks of you as the son he should have had, and of the wife he once had. For that, I must thank you." I nodded at Walter's explanation, then replied, "I love father. If it wasn't for him, I would have died in that alleyway a few nights back." Walter's grin faltered, but stayed on his face. "Then we both have something to thank him for, but that can be saved for later. For now, let us get you prepared for tomorrow night. Here is your room." While saying this, Walter opened a pair of double doors, revealing a very luxurious, but strangely sparse, bedroom. This was to be the room of his unborn son. He purposefully left it sparse so that he could both have his son decorate it how he wished, and use it to help teach his son spirit raising. For him to give it to you, means that he gives you the title of his heir, and the benefits and responsibilities that come with it. Now, let me get down to it. Walter pulled a tape measure out of his coat pocket. "Stand still so that I can get your measurements for the ceremonial outfit for tomorrow night." With that, Naruto stood completely still and let Walter measure him, asking various questions while he did so. After he was done, he told Naruto to go to sleep, and that he would need his energy for the ritual. With that, Naruto plopped down on the bed and started to fall asleep, welcoming the comfort of the bed. As I walked into the council room, I was immediately greeted by everyone getting to one knee. I walked around the council and to the head of the table, where my seat laid. When I was seated, everyone rose and sat down as well. I then decided to get straight to the point. "I have called you all together here for two reasons. When I went to Konoha, I saw a child being abused by the villagers. Later I found out that the child was one of the Hokage's children." The council was stunned, both by the fact that Tanawa had disconnected himself from Minato so much that he only recognized him as a fellow Kage, and by the fact that the Hokage would allow for people to abuse his own son. Thus, what Tanawa said next was unsurprising to them. For that reason, I have decided to cancel the alliance talks between us and Konoha. The second reason I have gathered you here is to announce my new heir and son. The council was again blown away. Tanawa has a new son. He swore never to be married again. The self-decided head of the council, Evo Blackraven, voiced his concerns. "Count Tanawa, did you not say that you weren't going to remarry? How have you had this child?" I nodded. "I did indeed say that, but this child is not mine." The Hokage's abused child hated them, rightfully so, and immediately agreed when I asked if he wanted to leave Konoha and become my son. "Clan heads, may I introduce the new heir of the von Karsteins, Naruto von Karstein." When the doors opened, there stood Naruto, fully dressed in the armor of Vlad von Karstein. The council could also feel the power Naruto contained, both in chakra and in spirit-raising potential, and immediately kneeled to the boy, recognizing him as the heir of the von Karstein throne. Naruto, being informed by Tanawa beforehand of the procedure, gestured with his armored hand to rise, saying, "Rise, honorable council, my thanks for entrusting me to become the heir to my father's throne, and to the responsibilities it comes with. I ask of you, not think of me as your ruler, but as a brother, a father, and a son. Treat me with the proper respect you would give them, and I will give you the same respect." The council responded with a resounding boom. "As it was in the beginning, it shall be in the end. All is equals, and all is family." I then stood and, raising my staff, slammed it on the ground 3 times, the sign for the official decree of the council, and announced to them the following before adjournment. "We shall be commencing the blood-binding ritual at midnight in the ballroom of my tower. If you wish to come, be there by 11:30. This council meeting is adjourned." Naruto and I then proceeded to walk out of the council's hall, and walked back to our tower. On the way, I congratulated him on being accepted by the council. "Good job Naruto with that meeting, Your status as my heir is now supported by the entire Council of Clans and, by extension, all of Drakenhoff's ninja populace. You are now officially my son, and tonight will be your induction into the family von Karstein. That is also where we shall announce your status as holder of Kurama Dono. Now, we shall have to prepare you for the ceremony, and get you fitted for the appropriate ball wear. I then smiled widely, and gave Naruto a hug when they entered their tower. It feels so good to finally have a son. I felt like I would never be able to find someone I would call my heir. Naruto's eyes had tears in them, he had a family now. He returned the hug and cried out of joy. For long moments that is where they stayed, in each other's arms, as father and son. I wasn't going to kid myself, I was very anxious for the blood-binding ritual. I looked around my tower's main ballroom, seeing my raised servants getting everything ready, and took a deep breath. "My count? Is something bothering you?" asked Walter, who was standing by my side. "Just nerves, Walter. I am impatient to have a biological son, and can't wait to have Naruto become that son," I explained to Walter. Walter chuckled and put his hand on my shoulder. "Completely understandable, sir. Just remember that Naruto and I are always supporting you, sir. I am pretty sure Naruto is also very impatient for this specific event." Meanwhile with Naruto was practically jumping off the walls, he was so excited. He was so excited he didn't hear Walter coming in. "While it is both amusing and very fitting that you are this excited, I need you to stand still so I can measure for the ceremonial clothes," Walter said, getting a small eep out of Naruto. "Walter, you scared me," Naruto exclaimed, while walking towards the mirror in his room's corner. "My apologies for that, sir. Now, your father wants to use the old Drakenhoff style of formal wear for the ceremony, as this is the first time it has been done with the von Karstein family in over a millennia. Luckily for you, those clothes don't have the weight nor the discomfort of the armor you wore at the council meeting." Walter then got out a measuring tape from his sleeve, and walked over to the mirror and stood next to Naruto as he started to measure for the clothes. Naruto, being the curious boy that he was, decided to ask about the effects of the ceremony. "Walter?" "Yes, young lord? Will the ceremony affect me at all?" "Only in appearance, young lord. Please, just call me Naruto. I don't like the sound of young lord, it makes me sound arrogant. As for the changes, what will they be?" "If you wish, Naruto. The changes will mostly be your hair darkening to black, your eyes gaining a purplish tint, and your skin turning paler. Other than that you will look the same. You may also gain what is it called in this world? A Kekai Genkai? Something around there. You will most likely gain your father's ability to use souls of the dead to extend your own life. While it sounds macabre, it actually is one of the ways to allow a spirit to pass over. By absorbing the soul of the spirit, the proverbial anchor keeping them tied to this world is released." Naruto actually liked the possible changes to his appearance. He thought that they would look rather nice. While he was a little freaked out at first, his father's Kekai Genkai sounded very useful, and sounded like he could see if he could experiment with it when he was older. This, however, raised some questions in his head. How old is father? A reasonable question, Naruto. Your father is actually as old as he looks. He is only around 27 years old. Walter then rolled up the tape measure, having finished measuring Naruto. "I am finished, Naruto. Go back to what you were doing. I shall be back shortly, however, to ask you some questions." Naruto nodded as Walter left, and decided to try and clean himself up some. Wearing that armor was very warm and uncomfortable. Time skipped to the ceremony. Naruto's POV. I took a deep breath as I walked inside the ballroom with my father. He was next to me as we both walked in. He was clad in a very nice outfit. Look at the picture up top. I was in a similar outfit, but mine had a orange sash instead of his red one. I had to admit, Walter was right. These things were a lot more comfortable than the armor from the council meeting. "Are you ready, son? This will last a few hours. We will hold the dance until midnight, then we shall have the ceremony to make me your father in all but heritage." Tanawa, my soon-to-be father, asked me, snapping me out of my stupor. "Yes, I am ready. Let's do this, father. The sooner we get through this, the sooner I fully become your son," I responded, my voice slowly building my confidence. "Well then, let us begin," my father shouted, flinging open the large doors. A swarm of bats, which I was actually comfortable around, flying in from behind us. We walked in after the swarm, father standing in front and to the left of me. "Everyone, Welcome to my home and thank you for coming. For those of you who have yet to know, this dance is being held tonight to celebrate the adoption of my new son. His name is now, and shall hence be, Naruto Uzumaki von Karstein, yelled my father, as he gestured to me and I stepped forward. The assembled crowd applauded as I stepped forward. Tonight's repertoire shall be as follows. We shall hold the dance until 11:50, at midnight we shall begin the ceremony. After the ceremony has concluded I shall release you to return to your respective estates. For now, enjoy the dance, let us begin, he continued, raising his voice at the end. I walked around the ball, getting introduced to the various counts. Time skip. Narrator's POV. Tanawa stood up, getting on top of a table to gain everyone's attention. Naruto was talking to Tanawa's pro-tempore, a man named Diedrich Kemmler, when he did so. Everybody. It has now reached 11:50. If you would kindly go across the hall to the ceremonial chamber, we may commence. Tanawa announced. As he finished, the double doors at the end flung open, followed by the doors on the other end of the hallway. Naruto followed his father to the chamber, and proceeded to sit in the chair on the pedestal in the center of the room. As he sat down, the rest of the guests filed in, and the runes around the base of the chair activated. They glowed an ominous green, and Naruto felt numb, as if his blood was being sucked out of his limbs. That is actually what was happening. Half of Naruto's blood was sucked out of him, and filled a glass container on one side of the chair. The container on the other side filled with Tanawa's blood, drained from him earlier that day. Tanawa gave a small speech. Tonight we welcome a new member into the von Karstein family. This has been done very few times in the history of the von Karsteins. Tonight, a new vampire count is born. One, born of blood foreign to Draenhoff, yet with as much potential that my ancestor, Manfred von Karstein, would compare to his own. Here he sits before us, determined, tried, and willing to leave everything for a new life. He represents all of the values of the vampire counts. Thus, he shall be welcomed into the coven, and into our family. Tanawa spoke, his voice full of power, so much so that the columns of the room seemed to shake. As he finished, the container with Tanawa's blood slowly emptied, being pumped into Naruto's body. The runes on the floor lighting up once more, this time even brighter, making sure his body would accept the blood, and the DNA it contained. Naruto's body adjusted accordingly, his hair gaining streaks of black, his eyes gaining shades of red to the point that they were purple. No, I'm not giving him the Rinnegan, that is just his eye color. And him gaining several inches, making him seem several years older than he was. After that, his skin tone became several shades grayer, giving him a near corpse-like appearance. After his skin had finished changing color, the runes around the chair ceased to glow, and Naruto felt as if he was only half his original weight. Tanawa walked over to Naruto and, holding two chalices, offered one to Naruto. Naruto accepted the chalice and found it full of wine. He raised his chalice up, in sync with his father, who said the following. With this drink we welcome another into the fold of Draenhoff. His fate has been started before his birth, but lays empty before him, as it is up to him as to what shall be written. With that said, Naruto tipped the chalice to his mouth, as did the rest of the guests. As they drank, a large swarm of bats flew through the chamber and the moon phased at its height into a blood moon. The world was welcoming the birth of a new vampire count. Scene change. Konoha, Uzumaki Namikaze estate. Meanwhile Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, suddenly felt as if something was missing. He looked over to a picture of his family and saw that the picture had a large crack dividing his family and his eldest son. Then Minato remembered, he hadn't seen his son in 2 days. He also realized just how much he had forgotten about him. He didn't even remember the last time they all had dinner together. He had to repair this rift in his family, he knew it. Anbu, get me Kakashi and Itachi. The Uchiha massacre never happened. Tell them that I have an urgent mission for them, he said to the 4 Anbu hidden in the shadows of the office. Yes, Lord Hokage. They responded before disappearing and reappearing around a minute later, Kakashi reading his book and Itachi holding a stick of dango. You summoned us, sensei? Kakashi asked, as Itachi finished up his dango. Yes, I did. I need you two to find my son, Naruto. I haven't seen him in 2 days, and do not know where he could be. Minato said, his voice full of sadness. You never knew where he was at, bastard. Both Itachi and Kakashi thought. rather pissed that only now had Minato decided to take interest in his son's life. While they had been taking what care they could over him, as they were often sent on missions. Of course Itachi already knew where Naruto was, but he wasn't going to tell Minato. Yes, Lord Hokage. The two responded, then proceeded to shunshin out to their respective homes, gear up, and meet at the gate. They ran for a few minutes and then, when they were sure no one could hear them, they spoke to each other. So, where do you want to go? Do you want to go visit him? We have a few days before Minato expects a report. Kakashi asked, his voice in his usual monotone. Sure, let's see how Naruto is faring with Tanawa. Itachi responded, remembering what he saw when he was in his crow henge. Alright, let's go. Time skip a few hours. So that is Draenhoff, huh? Kakashi asked, looking up at the central tower that was probably 3 times the size of the Hokage's tower. Well, it is sad that we couldn't get that alliance due to Minato's actions. These people are certainly good architects if that tower is any indication. It must be very sturdy if it is able to stand straight up that high. Yes, they are. On my few missions here I learned that there are 2 things this city embraces: loyalty and respect. The people here all know each other, and all of them are at least Chunin-level fighters. Itachi said, starting to walk up to the gate after stashing his Konoha headband in his Anbu armor, along with his mask. Kakashi doing the same as Itachi as he started walking forward. As they approached the gates they were suddenly surrounded by about 15 ninjas, the vest and the symbol emblazoned on it identifying them as Chunin of Draenhoff, all of whom were pointing kunai and the one Junin-level ninja holding a naginata, for which the stance he was in was a testament to his skill with. Halt, what is your business here? The Junin asked, the naginata staying completely still pointed at them. We have come here to visit our surrogate little brother, he moved here recently and we wish to visit him. Itachi smoothly answered, his tone not showing any trace that he was bending the truth. What is their name, and where are you coming from? The Junin questioned, still not convinced. We come from Konoha, and his name is Naruto, Itachi responded but was cut off by the guard. How do you know the young lord? He was only inducted last night. The guard, who now had the blade of his weapon very close to Itachi's throat. Itachi was about to respond when a new voice interrupted. At ease men, they are fine. Go back to your posts and leave it to me, said the man. Why yes Lord Krell. The ninjas responded before all of them shined out of sight. Now, follow me, I will lead you to the Count's tower, and you can discuss why you need to meet his son with him. The man, now known as Krell, said, beckoning the two to follow him. As Kakashi and Itachi followed Krell, they noticed that the entire village seemed to be in the middle of celebration. Pardon my ignorance, but why is everyone celebrating? Kakashi asked. Because the city finally has an heir who will succeed the Count if he should die. Krell said, as many of the city's citizens parted to make way for the imposing man. He was inducted into the family last night, and was announced this morning. The festivities are still continuing right now, and will likely continue for the next few days. Before either Itachi or Kakashi could respond, they were escorted into the Count's tower, and greeted by Walter. Lord Krell, it has been too long. Who are these two, and why are they here? The butler asked Krell, who responded in kind. Ah, Walter, it has been too long. These two need to talk to Tanawa, they wish to visit the young lord. Krell responded, before gesturing to Walter, follow this man, he shall lead you to Tanawa's office. The two Anbu, knowing that they would not have a choice in the matter, followed Walter as he made his way to the stairs. The Count has been very busy these past days, so I will tell you now. Walter stopped and turned to them, do not argue with him and, Walter leaned closer to the pair, if you even think of harming the Count or the young lord, I will gut you before you can even realize there is a kunai in my hand. With that, the man turned around and continued walking, the duo following a few seconds later. When they reached the correct floor, they were presented with a large set of double doors which both seemed as if they were forged out of solid metal. Walter grabbed a knocker and slammed it on the door 3 times, and received a reply after there was a soft thud and some chuckling. Come in Walter, came the reply, in a young voice that was disguising some laughter. Walter opened the door and he, as well as Kakashi and Itachi, were greeted with a rather amusing sight. Tanawa von Karstein, the Shinigami no Kage, was currently sprawled on his back on the floor. A child with black blonde hair and purple eyes was on top of him, and looked to be the man's son. Walter chuckled, you're related for only a few hours and you are already acting as father and son. Tanawa and the boy both laughed. Well, I can't help the fact that he has that Uzumaki energy, and plus, it has been long overdue for the both of us, isn't that right, Naruto, my son? At this, both Anbu went wide-eyed. That was Naruto? He looked completely different. They both thought, Naruto. Naruto. The two Anbu yelled in surprise. Naruto looked up at the two in surprise as well, and then ran and gave them a large hug. Inu-san, Crow-san, Naruto yelled as he hugged them tightly, nearly knocking the two over. What happened to you, Naruto? Itachi asked. Father adopted me. He made me part of his family. Naruto happily said, still hugging the two Anbu. The statement confused the two of them, but then they remembered bloodbinding and the effects it has. They then sighed and Itachi told Naruto what his father was doing. Naruto, we are not here to take you back, but your father is sending teams to look for you. The changes from the bloodbinding will help hide you in plain sight, but you should be careful with who you share your name. Itachi said to Naruto, his tone solemn, but then he gave a small smile. It is nice to know you have a good family for you now. He then turned to Tanawa, who had gotten off the floor. Tanawa-sama, me and my friend here would like to request if we can be granted citizenship here, so that we can visit Naruto and keep you both informed on what happens with Minato's search. Tanawa thought for a moment, but then decided on his answer, alright. I will grant you both citizenship, however, so that you are not suspected of being double agents, it will be put under a pseudonym. Is that good enough for you? Itachi and Kakashi both nod. We often have to go undercover. We are used to using pseudonyms. Kakashi responded. Tanawa goes over to his desk and gets 2 sheets out of a drawer. Your pseudonyms will be Warner Gausser, for you Itachi. You, Kakashi, will be under the name Wladislaw, pronounced Vladislav, Ragamzi. You are acquaintances in a small-time mercenary business. Tanawa said as he signed the 2 papers, after filling them both out. Thank you, Count Tanawa. Replied the two. It's the least I can do for you too. Said Tanawa, getting up from his chair. Now I would recommend that you two go get oriented around town. I have set up 2 apartments for you two at this address. Since you have been here much more often, Itachi, I suggest that you lead him around. The two nodded and left, not before Naruto gave them another tackle hug though. Now Naruto, let's get you started on spirit raising, or at least the basics of it. Tanawa said to Naruto after the two had left, for now I will have you summon spirits of whom you have an item they're connected with. Do you happen to have anything of the such? Tanawa asked. Naruto's eyes brightened, he then said, yes, I'll be right back. He then ran up to his room, opened the drawer of his bedside table, and grabbed the 3rd Hokage's pipe. He then ran back downstairs and showed it to Tanawa. Ah, that is why I smelt tobacco in your room. I thought someone had went in there during the ceremony to have a sneaky smoke. Tanawa joked, getting a small laugh out of Naruto. Okay. Now focus on the object and think of summoning the spirit attached to it. I will be right here in case it requires too much chakra. Tanawa instructed, if who he has summoned on accident with no training is indicative of anything, he should be able to do this no problem. He thought to himself. Naruto nodded and focused on the pipe. As he thought of the spirits he felt as if something was forming from him. When he looked in front of him he saw a figure forming out of his chakra. He felt slightly tired but not seriously enough to be worried. As the figure formed it started to gain more detail, forming into an old man in Hokage robes. When the figure gained color, Tanawa was shocked. The spirit Naruto had summoned was the ghost of the 3rd Hokage. The old Hokage was surprised as well, as he was not expecting to ever be summoned back to the land of the living. As Hiruzen looked around, he saw none of the signs of Edo Tensei, and then saw 2 people, a young man and a child, who was holding his pipe. When he saw his pipe everything fit together in his mind. Tanawa? He asked, still confused as to why he was summoned. Tanawa, still shocked, managed a reply, no, that is not my work. Sarutobi. That was my blood-bound son, Naruto. Hiruzen's eyebrows shot up, isn't that Kushina and Minato's son? He asked. Tanawa recovered from his shock, and put a grim look on his face, not after I found out they were neglecting him, abusing him even. I asked him if he wanted to come with me and join my family, and he agreed. He has been my biological son since last night. If it was possible to get Hiruzen truly mad, as in pure, unadulterated rage, that was it. It started with his eyebrow twitching, then he said to Naruto in a voice that hinted at barely contained rage. Naruto, please cover your ears. Time skip. Tanawa looked stoically at Hiruzen's spirit. Are you done yet? He asked. Got that all out of your system? Hiruzen caught his breath. That was probably the longest single instance of him swearing ever. When he caught his breath he replied, as long as they don't come here while I am summoned then I'll be fine. When I get back up there though, I am going to destroy all of their credibility among the deceased. Tanawa grins. If there was one thing you were always good, Hiruzen, it was thinking ahead. Tanawa then looks at Naruto and nods, signaling that he could uncover his ears. Thank you, whatever you were doing Sarutobi-sama lasted a while. It's already 10 at night. I summoned your spirit at 7. Sarutobi shrugged it off, still not as bad as Strom Thurmond, props if you can tell me the reference. Tanawa shook his head. Well, tonight has been a rather eventful evening, it's been nice hearing you, Hiruzen. Naruto, to release the summon, put your hands in the monkey seal, which is ironic, and think of severing the link. As Naruto did this, Hiruzen looked at him. It was nice meeting you, Naruto. Have fun with your new father, and do me a favor, and beat some sense into Minato for me, will you? Hiruzen heard Naruto agree to his question, then was transported back to the spiritual plane. After Naruto released the summon he yawned, unused to spending so much chakra. Tanawa hears this and chuckles. Let's get off to bed, huh? It's been an eventful day, and you did something most people could only hope to do on their first spirit raising. You summoned a cage-level ninja. I am so proud of you. Tanawa said, picking Naruto up at the end of his statement, then left his office, and up the stairs to Naruto's room. Tanawa laid him down on his bed and noticed that he was already asleep. He stifled a chuckle and then left to go to bed himself. Before he did, however, he looked up at the stars, which seemed to be especially bright tonight, and muttered to himself. Not even there for 5 minutes and you're already raising hell. Sounds like you, Sarutobi, or should I say Franz. It was nice talking to you, old man. Naruto was not in a good mood. He had just heard from his father. Naruto will now refer to Tanawa as father and Minato as, well, Minato, that he had to go back to Konoha. Of all the places, Naruto understood that his father felt the same about him having to go back, but still felt angry. He went through the conversation they had again. Flashback begin. Naruto. Dad called, walking into my room. Yes, father? I answered, wondering what he needed me for. Come with me to my office, we need to discuss something in private. I felt uneasy when he said that. We only talked in his office if it involved my identity or us traveling. After a few minutes of tense silence, we had reached father's office. After we walked in, father activated the privacy seals and sat at his desk, a look of stress going over his face. He looked at me, as I was sat in the chair across the desk from him. Naruto, do you remember the mass bombing that happened a few days ago? Where we had to kill those damn root members? My father asked. Yes, I do. I answered as I followed with my own question, what about it? Well, one of the buildings that was destroyed was the academy. Due to the closeness of our graduation exams, there is not enough time to rebuild it. Father answered. That was understandable. Draenhoffian tradition said that the graduation exams were to always to take place on a certain day. That day was June 5th, due to the fabled blood moon always appearing on that day. It represented the day where a necromancer or spirit raiser's power was at its highest and when spirits were able to freely manifest in the mortal plane. Thus, the graduation exams were always held on that day, to allow a child's ancestors to watch them take and pass the graduation exams of the Shinobi Academy. It was also the most holy day in the Draenhoffian calendar for the same reason, so father would be hard-pressed to find a suitable venue to hold the exams safely. So what are we going to do about it? We can't just cancel the exams. I responded, ready to aid my father. You're not going like what we will have to do. He said, then pleaded to me, promise me that you won't hate me for this, please? I ran over to him and embraced him. You should know better than anyone that I don't hold grudges against many people. I told him. Father sighed. Minato, that bastard, sadly knows of our traditions and has offered to allow us to hold them in tandem with Konoha's, as they land on the same day. I can't refuse his offer. If I do, not only will there be large backlash from the clan heads, the political implications would cripple us in more ways than one. At this point I was seething. I had to go back there. Father, you had to be joking. There is no way that they can be held there, that is a powder keg waiting to explode. It was true, after I was adopted the entire populace of Draenhoff knew of my past. Everyone, even the civilians now hated Konoha. Merchants refused to do business with Konoha's merchants. And ninja refused to take any missions in or around Konoha, and the council shot down any proposals by Konoha to increase the relations between the two villages. So sending an entire year's worth of even genin-level academy students was like sending a pack of wolves into a chicken coop and telling them not to attack any of them. And that's not the worst part. Minato is politically strong-arming me into putting you onto a team with Konoha genin when you pass. I've tried to find a way around it, but anything short of canceling the exams won't stop it. Father put his head on the desk. Naruto, promise me one thing. Yes, father? When you take this title from me upon my death or resignation, promise me that you will choose what's always the best for the people of Draenhoff, even if it's not the best for yourself. Of course, father, I told you years ago that I would do so. I know, I just wanted you to say so again. Flashback end. I decided to go to the Draenhoff cemetery, after using the spirit style mind message to tell his father that he was going there. He received his reply. Alright, just take a vampire with you. Ah, the vampires, Draenhoff's royal guard. They comprised of a seemingly insufficient number of only 50 operatives, but each one would be able to beat an Anbu captain with slight difficulty. I often spared with a few of them when they had the time. While I knew that I wouldn't be able to beat one every time, I had only beaten one of them once. I could hold my own against them for a good 10 to 15 minutes. I reckon that I am about high Chunin level due to this. I summoned my favorite operative, as she was the most casual of them and could actually hold a conversation with me. Yurei-chan. I called. Said person seemingly appeared through the wall. Her mask, think of Ghostface's mask, on the side of her head showing her blue eyes, brown hair, and fairly tanned skin. She was wearing the standard vampire uniform, as there wasn't an official uniform. Think of a female version of the armor the ranger character has in the ESO trailer. She was about 8 years older than Naruto, making her 20. Academy students take the exam at 12, right? Yes, Naru-kun? Yurei. Does anyone know how to add the bar above the U? I had to constantly copy-paste the entire name. Said, knowing that Naruto saw her as an older sister. Come on, we're going to the cemetery, I need to go clear my head. Naruto said, putting his hand on his head for extra emphasis. Alright then, let's go. Yurei said, putting her arm around my neck and walking with me to the front door of the Karstein estate. As they were walking towards the large memorial stone circle, think Stonehenge, she asked me something. Naruto? She asked, what's got you so worked up? I groaned in despair. The entire class that is taking the graduation exams are having to take them in Konoha due to that attack a few days ago, as well as the darn Hokage Akuma's political strong-arming. Father is being forced to create a highly volatile, theoretical powder keg due to it. It is stressing the two of us out. We're both worried about how we're going to keep my identity a secret. While my appearance has changed, anybody who knew what I looked like will be able to easily see through it. I ranted, then put my hand on the cool stone of the monument, which stood there keeping vigil over the dead. I felt calmed by the feeling, and by the sheer amount of restful dead lying at rest there. You know, Father told me about this cemetery's guardian, as well as the contract it holds with this place. I said, attempting to change the topic, as Yurei looked about ready to charge to Konoha and attempt to kill Minato. I didn't want him dead, well, at least by someone else's hand. Diedrich Todbringer, perhaps the strongest of all of my ancestors' allies. He held enormous amounts of strength both physically and politically. He helped negotiate the treaty between the Empire and the Vampire Counts, where the Empire inducted the Vampire Count as an elector for the province of Sylvania. And the Vampire Counts kept vampiric corruption in the Empire contained to Sylvania. He was revered a hero, ender of the eternal war between vampire and man. He was, with his permission, turned into the eternal guardian of the Treaty of Averheim, laid to rest here in Draenhoff after his death, and remains here. Only seen when Draenhoff is in mortal peril, or when he deems someone to be worthy of inheriting his title of guardian. Diedrich, huh? Fitting name, a lot of oomph behind that name's pronunciation. Yurei said looking at the statue, then laying her hand on the plaque of the statue of him. While we still draw breath, we shall try to make sure that he can continue his rest peacefully. Agreed. Time skip. The following day. Are you ready, Father? I asked, dressed in my armor, the Skyrim vampire armor, that father had forged for me. It was much more comfortable than the ceremonial garb I had wore during my introduction to the council. As ready as I'll ever be, my father said. We had told everyone about the change of plans, and as expected, no one was happy about it. After we explained the reasons why though, everyone sat in a reluctant agreement, though I knew that some of my classmates were already planning pranks. Then let us go, we should leave now, then we can arrive there tonight. I have talked with Sandame Gigi already, and he is telling the spirits that if they have descendants taking the exams that they are being held in Konoha. He also told me that many Konoha spirits are doing a very good job at messing with almost anything, from doing poltergeists in storage rooms, to making people hallucinate or hear things that supposedly aren't there. On one occasion the spirit of Tobarama Senju possessed a Junin, and made him run around screaming about how they were all going to die. I said to cheer him up, starting to chuckle at the end of it. Well then, looks like we'll have to take a look at the damage. My father said, his voice hinting at barely contained laughter. As our ancestor Manfred said during his stand in Hellfire Pass, let us storm the gates of hell and show the devil what real horror is. I said, following my father to the gathered graduate hopefuls and their families, and starting our own storming of hell's gates. Naruto was absolutely dying. Hiruzen had just told him about more hilarious paranormal hijinks going on in Konoha. Apparently ghost Uchihas were igniting parts of the village on fire, usually civilian council members' houses. Nara ghosts were casting shadows of fearsome-looking demons and monsters. Meanwhile, Minato's father was currently breaking or defacing every picture of Minato or him, and ghosts of the Uzumakis were constantly pranking Kushina, sometimes doing it 5 times a day. Naruto was rolling on the ground laughing, while Tanawa was barely keeping himself upright as well. Laugh well, now we know how to get Naruto to not be lazy. Naruto joked, barely managing to say the joke between bursts of laughter, causing Tanawa to fall on the ground as his laughing increased. This also drew many chuckles from the genin candidates and their families. Naruto and Tanawa eventually stopped laughing after a few minutes, and started walking, causing the rest of the group to continue as well. The group's trip was surprisingly fun. The candidates were having fun showing off their jutsu. After all, a genin's requirements for graduation was the 3 basics. A bunshin of any type, henge, and kawarimi, 2 C-rank jutsu, and the ability to stand upside down for 1 minute. These requirements were harsh, but reflected the quality of Draenhoff's forces, and the dedication of said forces. There were exceptions, however. If one could not use chakra due to a birth defect or a genetic disorder, they were allowed to pass if they could show a proficiency in either kenjutsu or taijutsu, and this occurred rather often. In fact, there were 3 of these people in Naruto's class, who demonstrated their abilities by flourishing with swords, or pulling off feats of flexibility or strength. Before anyone knew, they were at Konoha's gates and had to struggle not to laugh. All the ninja on duty looked like they hadn't slept in days, and the gate guards were muttering about someone constantly wrecking their equipment. Tanawa put on a neutral face. He had to keep up the image of being a cage after all, and signed everyone in. This took a while, as the class itself was around 50 people and the families of the students made the group's total size around 200 people. It went without saying that no one would want to attack the group, considering that the group had a cage, 50 Anbu level and 100 Jonin level ninja. After everyone was signed in, Tanawa led the group to where they would be sleeping for the next 2 nights, as the exams were tomorrow and they would leave the day after. Tanawa sighed as he thought of the meeting he would no doubt be having with Minato. The man would want to meet his new son, and would definitely want to try and get him to sign some sort of deal. Naruto already knew about this, and they developed a way of how to deal with the whole old family recognizing him thing. They wouldn't. Naruto would just act like himself. If the Uzumaki Namikaze family recognized him, he would acknowledge it, but would say that they were no family to him. While it may lead to some very sensitive situations, it would be the best in the long term and would be the funniest. Alright everyone. Tanawa called, getting the attention of the group. We may not want to be here, but we have to. I understand that many of you are furious at the citizens of Konoha, but we are guests here, and we don't want to start a war now. If you do some pranks, I'm fine with that, but I expect you all to hold yourselves to the same standards as you do in Draenhoff. Do I make myself clear? Tanawa orders in an authoritative voice, receiving a bunch of reluctant, yes sirs and, yes my counts. Good, now go to your rooms, one family per room. Pick anyone you wish, and if you have any problems, speak to me. Naruto and I will be at the Hokage's estate for a few hours, but will return after that. Tanawa instructs, before leaving with Naruto following him. They observed the general state of the now haunted village as they strolled, in no hurry to arrive at the estate. It seems that those ghosts were more vengeful than we thought, Naruto said. His observation was accurate. Everyone, except for some people, were being stalked by any number of spirits, who raised hell on them at every corner. Some of the people not being affected were the Ichiraku family. Their stand was doing fine, as it seemed it was the only place where spirits weren't destroying anything. Naruto had convinced his father to allow him to reveal his identity to certain people if he trusted them, and these two were some of the most deserving of that trust. Yes it is, Tanawa says, barely containing his laughter. Let's get this done and then quickly do this asinine meeting. The pair enter the stand, calmly taking seats at the counter, and are warmly greeted by Mr. Ichiraku. Good afternoon, he calls, before recognizing Tanawa. Your countship, it is an honor. He says, bowing slightly. Please don't bow, Tanawa says, lifting the man up. We are not in my domain, and even then I do not enjoy people bowing, and neither does my son. Tuchi Ichiraku was stunned, but got back into his groove. Alright then, what can I get you then? He asks. My son and I would like some miso ramen. We want something to eat before we go to meet Minato. Tanawa said, gesturing to Naruto, this is my son, Naruto von Karstein. Tuchi went silent, his face the very definition of shocked. There in front of him was Naruto. He looked slightly different, but the old man could tell that this was the same boy he would shelter very often. Tuchi broke down, hugging Naruto and repeating how glad he was that he was okay, as did Ayame when she came to see why her father was sobbing. After they finished a few minutes later, Naruto told them about how Tanawa adopted him, and how he was being trained to be heir of one of the strongest nations on the continent. After a very heartfelt reunion, and a very comedic realization about the recent hauntings, it was time for the von Karsteins to head to the Hokage's estate. After they left the ramen stand they walked through the village to the estate, holding in even more laughs while walking, and arrived at the entrance of the manor, where they were greeted by a rather comical sight. Each part of the manor was painted a different color, making the whole thing look like a rainbow vomited on it. There were many spirits around the house, all of whom were red-haired and were rolling on the ground laughing. Tanawa gave a quick jutsu to allow the ghosts to stay longer, making them aware of his presence, to which they warned of certain traps they placed on random objects on the house and quickly told them how to make a seal to circumvent them, which they applied to themselves under their armor. Minato opened the door just after they finished, having felt the chakra spike, and welcomed them to the house. The man looked ragged, his hair was blue, his clothes were tie-dyed, and the man looked as if he hadn't slept in days. Tanawa greeted the man and introduced him to his son. Hello Minato Dono, it is nice to see you, this is my son. Tanawa said, not acknowledging the man's disheveled appearance. It is nice to see you as well Tanawa Dono, but I wish it was at a better time. As you can see, we have been having several unexplainable incidents as you can see. I was hoping that you could help us out here with this spirit while you are here for the exams. Minato says, causing Tanawa to realize why Minato used so much pressure to bring them here. He wanted to have Tanawa get rid of the spirits in a way that he wouldn't owe him anything. Well, things were not going to go the way he wanted, in more ways than one. I saw, but I must inform you that this is beyond even my abilities. The spirits are furious and are not going to be affected by any of my jutsu or spiritual techniques. So I cannot help you with this. I can only wish that you figure out what has angered them and fix it. Only then may the spirits start to rest again. Tanawa said, making sure that no sign of deceit was showing on his face or in his voice. I have brought my son today so that he might learn how politics between cage-level leaders goes. Naruto bowed to Minato reluctantly, not wanting to be rude. Greetings Hokage-sama, he says, making sure not to let any disgust sound in his voice. Naruto's voice had changed in the time he spent with his new father. Where it used to be scratchy and raspy, it was smooth and confident. He often practiced changing his voice, so he had very precise control over how it sounded, to the point where he could fake any emotion or reaction in his voice and act accordingly. This, combined with the fact that he was actually quite fit for a 13-year-old, made him the target of many fangirls. and Tanawa constantly joked about this fact as he used to have the same happen to him. Minato bowed as well. "May I know your name, young count?" asked as they both rose from their bows. Naruto mentally smirked. Showtime, he and Tanawa thought simultaneously. "My name is Naruto von Karstein, Hokage-sama." Naruto said simply, but if one could read his mind at the moment they would hear him goading the man to react. Minato's face fell. When he looked at Naruto, he knew that the child standing in front of him was his son. But why was he calling him Hokage-sama, and why was he calling himself von Karstein and not Uzumaki Namikaze? Naruto? Minato stuttered out, "Is that you?" "Yes, it is me," Naruto said, his voice even not feeling any pity on the man who ignored him for the early years of his life. "Where have you been?" Minato asks, hugging his son, as he asked, "Your mother and I am so sorry." Naruto looked to his real father, Tanawa, and smiled, "My true home." He said proudly. We returned to our group where we left off, with Minato on his knees hugging his son, who was looking to Tanawa. Minato froze. His true home? What does he mean by that? His home is here in Konoha, with us. Minato thought, then looked at Tanawa. "You!" Minato shouted, "What have you done with my son?" Tanawa looked to Naruto, then back at Minato. "I acted as a father should, I took him in, I raised him, I trained him, I saved him from you and your village's incompetence." Tanawa said, his voice getting louder and more venomous every time he said, "I." "Meanwhile, you sat there, you forgot him, you neglected him. So the better question, Minato, is what have you done for him?" Minato was taken aback. He had never seen the normally stoic vampire count go off like that. He froze as he tried to think about any times he spent with his eldest son, any at all, but came up empty. He couldn't remember even one time he did anything with Naruto. So he stayed there, on both knees. Naruto looked at his father, the person he acknowledged as his father, and said, "To-san, after this can we go train? I want to try something with spirit raising?" Completely ignoring the blonde Hokage hanging onto him, Tanawa smiled and nodded to his son, before looking back to Minato. "My genin will be staying in this village for 3 days, Minato, and not a minute more. While I cannot back us out of the deal concerning having my son on one of your village's teams, I will be making sure that Konoha doesn't lay a finger on him. If he is hurt by Konoha while on this team, I am pulling all treaties with the Leaf Village and the Land of Fire as well as pulling him from the team. And he is being pulled out of that team as soon as he makes Chunin. My decision is final, and my threats, very much real." Those words have the backing and support of all of the citizens of Draenhoff. These are the words of our nation, and they are ready to go to war with the Hidden Leaf at any moment they wish. Don't hurt my son, or this village won't stand for long afterwards. Tanawa says, his voice sounding like that of an older, wiser man, a man who has seen the horrors of war. They were the words of a king, no, of an emperor. With that Tanawa spun around, his cloak flapping as he did so, and started walking. Naruto shrugged off Minato's hands, which tried to grab him again, but failed. "I'm so sorry, Naruto, please come back, we miss you, I miss you." Minato begged desperately as Naruto walked away, his cape showing the crest of the von Karsteins. Naruto looked back at Minato. "It's too late for that, Hokage-sama," Naruto said before continuing to walk away, and he and Tanawa seemed to fragment into a swarm of bats, and fly away. Time skip. At the hotel lobby, 2 swarms of bats flew through the door, forming into 2 figures, who walked up the stairs and into the hotel's presidential suite, before hugging each other. "That was interesting, to say the least," Naruto said, causing Tanawa to chuckle. "Good job, son, now go get changed into your practice armor and we can go see your idea." He responded, pulling away from Naruto, who nodded and ran to get changed, their bags having been put in their rooms by one of the families. Naruto appeared back a few minutes later with his armor on, and they went to one of Konoha's training grounds. "You all know which. What did you want to try, Naruto?" Tanawa asked. "I wanted to try and use a soul to boost an aspect of someone's abilities, such as chakra control or capacity," Naruto said. Tanawa put his hand on his chin. "An interesting idea. I know from experience that one can use other souls to slightly boost their own power. I myself had to do so to people who shouldn't be allowed to live," he said grimly. "However, I have never tried boosting one specific attribute of one skill. It may work," Tanawa admitted. "I hope it does," Naruto said. "Let me start small, let's see if I can gain a Junin spirit's chakra control. Naruto then summoned a deceased Junin from Draenhoff, and explained the experiment to him. Alright, let's try this, tell me if you start feeling any pain, I don't want to destroy a spirit by mistake. Naruto said to the spirit who nodded. Naruto began channeling his chakra, focusing on blending his and the Junin's chakras. The Junin said nothing, feeling no pain, only a slight discomfort. When Naruto finished, he decided to see if it worked. Now, if this worked, I should be able to raise one of the vampires. Naruto said, before attempting the summoning. In front of them on the ground, the symbol of the vampire counts appeared, and a figure appeared, his body cloaked in shadow. When the figure fully formed, it revealed a person who shocked Tanawa. The figure looked up, revealing it to be Manfred von Karstein. The field was silent, as if nature itself felt and recognized the power of the man that had been summoned there. Naruto, not knowing that the man before him was Manfred von Karstein, cheered. It worked. It worked. I did it too, San. Naruto cheered, hugging Tanawa, who stood stock still, staring at Manfred, who stared back with his soul-splitting gaze. Manfred's gaze shifted from Tanawa to the still celebrating Naruto and was shocked, though not shown by his face, by the power coming from this boy, as it nearly matched his own. He raised his arms, then clenched and unclenched his hands, before nodding to himself. It seems that I am weaker than what I was once at, but I should be able to regain it with time, if this summon manages to hold. He thought, which of you managed to summon me, younglings? Manfred asked, his voice echoing on itself, sounding like that of an overlord. Tanawa kneeled, before managing to stutter out, my son, Naruto, did, Manfred. You impudent cur, who do you think you are, addressing me in such a casual manner? Manfred shouted, I should blast you into oblivion for your insolence. Tanawa shuddered along with Naruto, who fell to the ground, hiding behind Tanawa. I am your descendant, your 12 times great-grandson, to be exact. Tanawa responded, his voice shaking. Tanawa and Naruto relaxed, as instantly Manfred's killer intent and magical pressure was lifted off of them. Manfred was shocked, his line had survived beyond him? To have over 12 generations? You are my descendant? You are full-blooded von Karsteins? Manfred asked, attempting to sat his worries. Yes, we are von Karsteins, even my son who managed to summon you, Naruto, is a full-blooded von Karstein even though he is adopted. Much has changed since you walked the world, grandfather. Manfred nodded, but was still confused. He is fully von Karstein, but is not of our line? How? I believe you would call it magic, grandfather, but in this time we call it chakra, and a ritual was developed that would allow a person to be adopted into a family while giving him all of the traits and kekkei genkei, genetic mutations that allow certain abilities, of the adopting family. Through this ritual he is my son, the heir of Draenhoff, and your grandson. I will explain more when we get back to Draenhoff in a few days. We are having to do rank tests in another city, called Konoha, due to an attack that destroyed the exam building a few days before the blood moon. Tanawa explained. Manfred nodded, and was surprised when Tanawa asked, do you wish to retake the mantle of Vampire Count? It is yours by right. Tanawa asked, removing his helmet, which bore the symbol of the Vampire Count, and offered it to Manfred, who shook his head. Though the offer tempts me, and the position was one I held very dearly, you are more suited to lead Draenhoff, as you have more experience with this world's politics, and of its way of waging war. Manfred, though reluctant, admitted, pushing the helmet back to Tanawa, who put it back on his head, and stood. If it is all right with you, grandfather, I want to teach my son one last thing before we left. Manfred nodded, go on, I will watch, I may even help should I see it fit. Tanawa turned to Naruto. Did you remember your sword, Naruto? Tanawa asked. Naruto responded by drawing the sword, a red and black two-hander with 3 spikes on the blade. Naruto was able to hold the heavy blade, which his father said would grow with him, in a single hand, but preferred to use 2. The sword is the Bloodskull blade from Skyrim. Good. I am going to teach you a special ability that I learned. I call it Blade Pulse. Watch. You push chakra into the blade. Tanawa's blade, a more traditional claymore, started to glow purple, and then slash, releasing the chakra from the blade as you do so. Tanawa swung diagonally, the purple light leaving the blade, forming a sort of chakra edge that hurtled towards a massive oak tree and went straight through, going through 2 more trees of similar thickness, before the blade burst, causing a deep gash in a fourth tree. Naruto's jaw dropped. Tanawa chuckled. Seems powerful, don't it? I made it for breaking through walls and armor, never had to use it, but this will take down up to 20 feet of solid wood, or 10 feet of good quality stone. Manfred nodded his head in appreciation. The spell, or whatever it's called these days, had a lot of potential. If used correctly, it could take out a city gate, or even collapse a small fort. Tanawa looked to Naruto. Now, you try it, son. Naruto hefted up his blade, taking a familiar stance. So you taught him my stance, grandson? It fits him well, he reminds me of when I was learning the stance. Manfred thought, noticing a few flaws. Wait, he said simply, walking over to Naruto, adjusting his stance, moving his arm up, his legs further apart, turning his foot, and so forth. There, now you're in the stance correctly. I would know, this was my stance after all. Naruto nodded, holding the stance for a few moments to remember the way he had his limbs arrayed, before getting out of it, walking a few paces, and then getting back into it. Better, Manfred stated, spotting no flaws in the stance. He would train him in it later. The youngling had grown on him somehow. Naruto nodded, closed his eyes, and attempted to focus chakra into his sword, the blade slightly glowing, then opened his eyes and swung horizontally, the chakra coming out of the blade and creating a semi-deep gash in a tree, about 3 inches deep, somewhat sinning the wood around it. Naruto frowned, before Tanawa put a hand on his shoulder. Good job. You managed to do it on your first try. He congratulated, but it wasn't anywhere close to yours too, San. Naruto responded. You did better than me when I first tried it. I couldn't even get the blade to form for the first month or two. Naruto smiled at this, before looking to Manfred. Thank you for helping me with the stance, grandfather, he cheered, hugging him. Manfred was shocked. What was this feeling he was having? It felt good. He allowed for a small smile to form on his face. No problem, youngling. Couldn't have you learning the stance incorrectly now, could I? This caused Naruto to smile and laugh, before running over to his father and jumping on his back, taking care to avoid his sword. Is this how it feels to be a grandfather? To be a teacher? I think that I could get used to this feeling. Manfred thought, following after the two relatively young vampires. Noggish, that makes me feel old. The days before the exam were tense ones. Naruto and Tanawa spent them bringing Manfred up to date with who was who now. The Sarutobi clan is the descendants of the Franz line. They are few in number, but are individually wise and powerful. The Tsuchikage, Onoki the fence-sitter, is the descendant of Thorgrim Grudgebearer, and while also wise and powerful, has inherited his race's stubbornness and resistance to change. The current Kazekage, Rasa, is a very loose descendant of the Beastman chieftain, Kazrak One-Eye, and has inherited his cruelty and amorality. Going as far as to demonize his own son due to his own actions, but is just as ruthless a politician. The current Raikage, who is only called A, is a descendant of, believe it or not, the Greenskin Big Boss, Grimgor Ironhide. He and his family have inherited the size and bulk, but have also got his hot-headedness. The current Mizukage, Yagura, is a descendant of Lewin Leonker, is currently losing a civil war as he has tried to continue the unforgiving and outdated traditions of his ancestors' land. The near-extinct Senju line is all that remains of the Wood Elves. Their lines were strong enough that 2 generations ago a descendant of Orion, Hashirama Senju, was able to call upon the wild to aid him in battle. The Uchiha clan, which is believed to have only 2 surviving members, is all that remains of Archaon's line. The Sharingan, their Kekai Genkai, reflects this fact, as it represents lust for power and was created by residual chaos corruption. Last but not least is the Namikaze clan, which descends from the High Elf Prince, Prince Tyrion, and it seems that while most of the traits of a High Elf of his line has left, but that hubris and pride has still stayed strong. Other lines remain, but as of now, are unimportant. Tanawa explained, his voice venomous at the mention of the Hokage's family. Manfred nodded as he absorbed his information. It seemed that nearly all of the main lines of the Old World's superpowers had survived somewhat. If Tanawa was right, then the von Karsteins were one of the best off of the lines, as they had 3 members. Naruto, who had been brewing tea in the kitchen until now, brought the kettle along with a bottle of soul wine, one of Draenhoff's exports. It often gave those who drank it regularly longer lives. It was considered custom to offer a guest a glass full of the cherry-red liquid. When Naruto set the tray down, he mixed his tea with a small amount of the wine, but gave his father the two liquids in separate glasses. "How would you like your tea? Or would you prefer the wine, grandfather?" Naruto asked. Manfred thought for a second before responding. "Give me a glass of both," he answered. "I am also curious about you try them, as they don't seem like things that would mix well." "Thank you," Tanawa exclaimed. "I don't get why he likes them mixed. The flavors clash too much." Manfred accepted a glass of wine and took a sip. The sweet flavor of the wine was balanced by the pleasant warmth it gave as flowed down his throat, being completely contrary to the wine's unusually cold temperature. He then took a sip of the tea, a slightly bitter taste that relaxed and calmed him. "They are both very good individually, now to see why you like them mixed, and if I do as well," Manfred said, before pouring the remaining wine into his tea, watching the brown and red liquids mix into an orange color. He then took a drink and was amazed. The cold of the wine was balanced by the warmth of the tea. The flavors of the two drinks combined to form a slightly sweet taste. The warmth of the wine was still there as it went down his throat, but the irritation that the alcohol caused was nullified by the tea. Overall, the drink was pleasurable to drink, if a bit unorthodox. "I see where the boy comes from, it is rather good mixed together," Manfred said, causing Tanawa to sigh and Naruto to grin. The rest of that night was spent laughing, drinking, and storytelling. Time skipped to before the exams. The academy. Naruto was bored, not only that, but he was about to throttle 4 people in this room. Some pink banshee was constantly screeching about some raven-haired kid, who was glaring at just about everyone, and seemed particularly jealous of the sword on Naruto's back. The other 2 were the ones really driving him insane. Menma and Naruko, his birth siblings, that thought making Naruto gag, were arrogantly declaring that they would pass and about how none of the Drakenhoff genin should pass. Needless to say, it took all of the Drakenhoffian genin's willpower not to murder the twins. What the 2 idiots said next, however, shattered that patience. "We heard that the son of that fake of a Kage was here. I bet he can't even throw a kunai," Menma declared arrogantly, not knowing the powder keg he just lit. There was an unspoken rule among that year's Drakenhoff genin. After hearing his story, Naruto had become the whole class's brother. Everyone was protective of him when it came to his past, so they always loved seeing him happy, for he had proved many times that he was willing to sacrifice many things to allow others to be happy. So it was no surprise, to the Drakenhoff genin at least, that immediately after that statement left Menma's mouth, that there was a variety of kunai, senbon, katanas, and other weapons pointed at his head. "Shut your mouth. Continue insulting our brother and I will skin you alive," one of the more advanced members of the class warned. "Lower the weapons," Naruto said simply, his voice barely above a whisper, yet was heard perfectly by everyone in the room. "But Naru ni," the genin said. "Stand down, I can speak for myself," Naruto interrupted, walking up to Menma, who somehow managed to reassemble his arrogant attitude, not to mention his pride and courage, of which he had little. "So this is the pretender's son? You don't look like much," Menma spat. Naruto just looked at him with a bored face. He refused to be goaded by this worm. "Listen here, if you think you can offend me with such petty excuses for insults, you are sorely mistaken. That being said, since you decided to try and insult my family, you and I on the top of the building, after the exams. It seems I had to put you in your place," he challenged before walking back to his seat. "This will be fun." Naruto was bored. This kid, who he was embarrassed to call his brother, had talked and talked and talked. However, the kid was struggling to even land a hit on him. "Enough of this," Naruto stated, grabbing a sloppy punch from Menma, before sweeping his legs out from under him, inciting a cheer from the Drakenhoff genin. "Get up," Naruto said, enraging Menma. "Shut up," Menma shouted, attempting to kick Naruto, who sidestepped and slammed Menma's head into a stone bench. "Get up," Naruto repeated, crossing his arms. "Bastard," Menma screamed, attempting a wild punch, which Naruto grabbed. Naruto then gripped Menma's head, slamming him through the stone bench. If someone can guess the video game cutscene I'm referencing, you get a cookie. I said, "Get up," Naruto said towards Menma, who was now writhing in pain, only to have to dodge a punch from Naruto. He then put her in a situation similar to Menma, except she was now halfway through an iron door which separated the staircase and the roof. Pitiful, you attacked me from behind and you still can't even hit me. Naruto berated, turning back to Menma who had somehow managed to stagger to his feet. Shut up, Menma screamed, being cloaked in a malicious red chakra. Hey, Kura-ni, ready to have some of your chakra back? Naruto asked mentally. Do you even have to ask Kit? Replied Kurama, who bared his fangs in Naruto's mindscape. Here, let me give you some help with it. Naruto noticed that everything seemed sharper and could hear things he didn't before. There we go, you should have no problem crushing this pest now. I should be able to do more later, after I have more of my chakra back. Kurama said, smirking. Thank you Kura-ni, Naruto said, when he noticed something. While Naruto and Kurama had been having their conversation, Menma seemed to have formed a ball of chakra in his hand. This is a technique that my dad taught me. You don't stand a chance. Rasengan, Menma shouted, attempting to shove it into Naruto's chest. Naruto soon found that Kurama's modifications were very useful, as he found out that he was able to whip his hand around and grip Menma's wrist. The Rasengan was an inch from his chest. Naruto then squeezed his wrist so hard that there was a sickening pop, and then Menma's hand went limp, causing the Rasengan to disperse. Naruto then gave a quick strike to the back of Menma's neck, knocking him unconscious while simultaneously absorbing Kurama's chakra from the seal on Menma's spine. Naruto sighed before going to Naruko and doing the same to her seal, which was in the same spot. Now that the annoyances are dealt with, Naruto began, cracking his neck and dusting off his hands. Let's go back and celebrate the exams, yeah? This was met by a round of laughter, and then of agreements from the Draenhoff genin. Before they all left for the hotel, each person doing either a bat swarm shunshin or some other method of travel, leaving the twins up on the roof, stuck in their respective objects, alone. Time skip about an hour. Minato was sitting in his office at home, which currently looked like someone had hosted a paint war in it, when he noticed something strange. Weren't the twins supposed to be back a while ago? He thought, they haven't burst through my door like they usually do. I should go check the academy. When he teleported to the kunai he had embedded in the roof, he was met with a hilarious but shocking scene. His children, Minato conveniently forgetting about Naruto, were currently stuck in a bench and a door, their heads being stuck on the other side. What happened here? Minato shouted, getting the attention of his children. Menma was the first to respond. It was that fake of Hokage's son. He shouted. He challenged us to a fight and he cheated and had his classmates slam us through these. Naruko continued. Minato was furious when he heard this, and was about to flash away to go and yell at Tanawa, when a voice sounded out. Actually Hokage-sama, the twins here have it the wrong way around, said a masked man. Crow, what are you doing here? Minato asked, calling him by his Anbu code name. Crow gestured over to the twins. I was watching over the academy, and these two picked a fight, and nearly got themselves killed by the Draenhoff genin. Then they decided to call out the Shinigami no Kage's son, who had told the genin to back down. He challenged them after they insulted his father. After the academy was let out they met up here. He destroyed Menma, who didn't even land a hit on him, before he slammed his head through that destroyed bench over there. Before he could even finish turning around, Naruko lunged and attempted to punch him in the back, which he dodged and slammed her into the door. Menma had managed to get back to his feet, and had the Kyuubi's chakra leaking out of him. He then formed a Rasengan and attempted to thrust it into the kid's chest. At this he gave a glare to Menma, which Minato joined with a look of disappointment. The kid grabbed Menma's wrist and dislocated it, causing him to release the Rasengan, before delivering a neck chop to Menma, as well as one to Naruko. Then he left after putting Menma back into that bench. The Anbu explained, before waving and disappearing, leaving Minato to try and free his children, after giving them a lecture about how they shouldn't try and kill allies, and how they shouldn't underestimate unknown opponents. Scene change. Tanawa and Naruto's room in the hotel. Meanwhile, the Draenhoff genin was buzzing about the fight, with many people coming to Naruto to congratulate him, and others coming to hear the story firsthand. Manfred himself was amused at the fight, as well as Tanawa. This is what Crow was welcomed by when he walked into the room, as he was hoping to see Naruto. Dog was sadly still on a mission, as he would have loved to see him, and would likely be mad at him for it. As he entered the room, Naruto looked up from the group of little kids who wanted to listen to the story. Ah, Warner, It's nice to see you again, Naruto said, using the pseudonym his father had come up with for the Anbu. It's nice to see you again as well, Otuto. He replied, taking off his mask, revealing none other than Itachi Uchiha. Where's Kakani? Naruto asked, getting up and hugging the usually stoic Anbu. He's out on a mission, and is probably on his way back, and only now hearing that you are here, and is probably cursing me right now. Itachi explained, sweat dropping at the end. Meanwhile, damn it, Itachi, you bastard, Kakashi shouted, as he was now 3 days from Konoha, and learning only now that Naruto was in the village. Back to the hotel, Naruto laughed at his older brother, probably knowing him. Itachi shared a laugh with Naruto, before smirking, that was some nice fighting you did earlier. Naruto scratched the back of his head, oh yeah, I may or may not have been blowing off some steam. Some? Alright, a lot of steam, Naruto admitted, sighing. Itachi laughed at this, and joined in on telling the story with Naruto, both of them blissfully unaware of the swearing, furious, white-haired Anbu cursing Itachi's existence. Naruto was sitting in the academy in Konoha. He already knew that he was not going to be teamed with anyone from Draenhoff, as Minato's demand from Tanawa made it so that he had to be teamed with 2 Konoha shinobi. He wasn't even listening to the rest of his classmates' teams, as he already knew what the teams would be, as he had helped his father make the Draenhoff Genin teams. He was just waiting until his name was called or something interesting happened. Speaking of which, Iruka, the name of the instructor he had gathered, was done giving the usual team placements and now was announcing the joint team. Now, due to a treaty between Lord Hokage and the Vampire Count, we are making a joint team composed of 2 Konoha Genin and 1 Draenhoff Genin. The members of this team are Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Menma Uzumaki Namikaze, and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze from Konoha, and Naruto von Karstein and Manfred von Karstein. Iruka announced, unaware of the massive explosive note he just primed. Naruto was furious, but didn't let it show. He figured that's what would have happened. Minato was desperate to try and make amends with Naruto, so it was obvious that he was going to put his family into the team, and forced Tanawa to put Naruto in. However, Manfred was the only person that he would allow Minato to make the Draenhoff instructor on the team. Manfred was standing next to Kushina, his stature making the usually very strong and intimidating woman seem frail in comparison. Manfred looked over the class, before giving his instructions. Joint team, Ruth, now, he said simply, not wasting any time before bursting into a swarm of bats and flying up out the window. Naruto followed suit, a smaller swarm following the first. Kushina decided to shushen up there seeing Naruto hugging Manfred, and the big man ruffling his hair. This caused her to frown, as her son was being friendly with this stranger, when his mother was right in front of him. She was about to give them both a piece of her mind, when Menma and Naruto walked through the doorway, said door being removed due to having a hole the size of Naruto's head. Naruto let go of Manfred, but stayed close to his Gigi. Now that we are up here, let's do some basics and introduce ourselves, Kushina said, going into sensei mode. How so, Ka-chan? Naruto asked, Menma nodding with her. These are the supposed children of prophecy? Disappointing, Naruto thought with a sweat drop. I can't believe my chakra was sealed into those imbeciles. Thanks again, Kid, for getting it back, said Kurama, who was currently looking through Naruto's DNA, noting anything that would be fun to play with. No problem, Kurama. How are you feeling with it back? Naruto asked. Like I woke up from a very long nap. Now I can fully thank you for this. When you have some time to yourself, come and see me, Kurama said, before cutting the mental conversation. Your name, likes and dislikes, maybe a hobby and goal, Manfred stated with as much finesse as a warhammer. Oh, stated Naruto, I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I like my brother Menma, my parents, Sakura, and Sasuke-kun. I hate my other runaway brother, those who mess with my family, and Iruka's lectures. My hobbies include training, shopping, and fashion. My goal is to be the first female Hokage, Datbeo. Next was Menma. I am Menma Uzumaki Namikaze. I like my sister Naruko, the villagers, my parents, and Sakura-chan. I hate my brother, those who mess with me, and Sasuke Baka. My hobbies are training, racing my friends, and flirting with Sakura-chan. My goal is to become even stronger than both my mother and my father. Now was the turn of Naruto, who sighed, I'm Naruto von Karstein. I like my father, my grandfather, my friend Yurei, and katanas. I dislike my birth family, people who abandon others, and arrogance. My hobbies are swordfighting, archery, and talking to spirits with my father. My goal is to make Draenhoff the greatest nation out of all the elemental nations. Lastly was the turn of Manfred. My name is Manfred von Karstein, I like my grandson, dislike imbeciles, have a hobby of fighting, and wish to see my family become one of the greatest lines on the planet. Kushina then clapped her hands. All right, meet us at training ground 72 at 7:30. She then disappeared in a flurry of leaves. Naruto turned to Manfred. I need to talk with Kurama-sensei. I'll be back before sundown most likely. He said, getting a nod back. I'll tell your father, no doubt he'll want to give you something to practice with me, so you're not entirely bored. Then 2 swarms of bats flew off of the roof, heading in different directions, leaving 2 now whining blondes. Naruto appeared in a shady area of one of Konoha's more deserted parks, and sat in the lotus position, cleared his mind, and went into his mindscape, which had become a large forested estate, the forest breaking to reveal a clearing with a large, samurai-styled castle. Walking in, Naruto saw Kurama, the seal having changed into a lavish kimono, that made him seem as if he was a daimyo. At the top, the image is not mine. Kurama smirked as Naruto walked in, so, how is your team? He joked. Naruto chuckled, about as strong as a dead fish, and twice as repulsive. Kurama laughed, I never got a chance to properly thank you kid, so I wanted to make it count. As I've told you while I would teach you, I am not the only Kitsune out there, I am, however, considered the leader of them, as such, I am also allowed to determine who holds the Kitsune summoning contract. As you can guess, I want you to have it, and be the first summoner to have it in millennia. Naruto was shocked. Naruto knew that Kurama was grateful, as Naruto had reportedly been his best host he'd ever been sealed into, but to trust him with a contract that hasn't been used in thousands of years, that was insane. This also brought a rather interesting thought up. Does that mean I could summon you out from the seal? Naruto asked, expressing his theory. Kurama laughed, but shook his head. While I love how that was the first thought you had, it is sadly improbable. Even if you did manage to summon me, I would likely have only a fraction of my power. The Reaper seal is strong enough to keep me anchored here for as long as you live, and is set up so that if I would be imprisoned in it until then, you've managed to loosen it slightly, but it would have to be weakened further in order for me to take a physical form with any real practicality. He explained, attempting to describe the seal in simple terms. This saddened Naruto, who frowned and slumped his shoulders, causing Kurama to hug him. Kit, while I know you mean well, and you know I care for you, there are many things in this world that surpass most people's abilities, few of which more so than the power of the Shinigami. Kurama comforted, but if there is any group who could help break that, it is your new family, as their tradition is to defy the Shinigami. Naruto smiled softly and nodded, then that is what I'll try to do. Kurama laughed, there we go, now let's get this signed. He said, pulling a small scroll out of his sleeve, which then resized into one almost as tall as Naruto. As he unrolled it, the scroll was blank, until the end, where several names, written in an unknown language, stood, the dark crimson of dried blood staining the golden stationery. Naruto looked at the names. These people must have been legendary if they were allowed to sign the contract. Naruto then looked at Kurama, who gave him a senbon. Prick your finger, the contract has to be signed in blood for it to be valid. He explained. Naruto nodded, pricked his finger, and wrote his name, the flowing kanji glowing briefly before settling as a bright red, signifying him to be the current holder of the contract. Kurama smiled, and like that kid, you're now the first human in millennia to hold the Kitsune contract. You'll go on to do great things kid, now go home, your father has something he wants to show you. With that, Naruto left his mindscape, noticing that he had about half an hour till the sun would set, and burst into a swarm of bats and appeared in the hotel, right outside him and his dad's shared room. He then walked in and saw his father sitting on the couch, a glass of blood wine in his hand. Sorry I'm late dad, Kurama wanted to give me a gift for helping him so much, he said, causing his father to nod. Understandable, Manfred told me after the exams, and there's no way you could have lied to him. Tanawa said, giving a smile, I wanted to give you a couple of things, so that you don't go completely insane having to deal with your teammates and your other sensei. Tanawa put his glass down on the table, and lifted up a box, before handing it to Naruto. Here, thought you would want to reveal it yourself. Naruto opened the box, revealing a small crystal scrying ball that could fit in his hand. These are something I had some help with, they will allow you to call me whenever you wish, as I hold the other paired orb. If I am unable to talk, the orb will show why. I didn't want you to feel too homesick while you're stuck here. Naruto hugged him, tears filling his eyes, and cried into his shoulder, I'm going to miss you and Yurei. Tanawa hugged him back, I'll miss you as well, son. But let's save this for later, I still have one last thing to give you. Tanawa leaned over to the box and pulled out a very old scroll, that looked as if it had just been written. The only indication of its age was the seal on the sides of it, which bore a depiction of Heinrich Kemmler's fabled skull staff as well as his equally infamous Chaos Tomb Blade. This scroll, as you may have guessed, contains some of Kemmler's most infamous techniques, as well as multiple ones that he never finished. If there is one person who I believe could finish his work, it's you. You have made me the proudest father one could see, and have met and exceeded any and all expectations. These should allow you to continue growing as a spirit raiser, while Manfred helps you learn the way of the sword, as well as give you more knowledge of how to use chakra, as I have shown him how to use it, and he seems to have already become an adept chakra user, likely due to his experience in channeling magic. Tanawa revealed, explaining his reasons while praising his son, who he still held in his embrace. When he didn't get a response, he looked down to see that his son had fallen asleep. Chuckling, Tanawa took a quick trip into Naruto's mindscape and asked Kurama to tell Naruto about the scroll. After he did that, Tanawa removed his son's armor, leaving him in the robes that he wore underneath, and allowed sleep to claim him laying there next to his son, who clung to him, refusing to let go, even while dreaming. To say that the team of Naruto, Menma, and Naruko was going well and doing work would be similar to saying that fire is cold. Menma and Naruko refused to do any sort of menial or manual labor. Menma because he thought it below a man of his status, and Naruko because she did not want to get herself or her clothes dirty. As such, Naruto was doing almost all of the work, and this was reported to Minato, who was originally unconvinced. But after numerous complaints, he decided to oversee the team's next mission, that is to say he spied on them. Flashback a few hours earlier. Minato watched as the team arrived at the location the client had asked them to, an enclosed farm a few miles outside of Konoha proper. He already had an idea how this would go, and it wasn't good. Menma was dressed in full combat gear, a green padded shirt and blue pants, both of which had armor attached to certain places, such as the elbows and knees. The clothes were highly valuable, as far as armors go, and he seemed to think that he wasn't going to be doing any work. Naruko was even worse, she was in a yellow and orange kimono, wearing fashionable shoes, which were little more than flip-flops with straps up the sides of her calf, with the sleeves covering up her hands. Those were, no doubt, perfectly manicured and free of calluses. She seemed to be concerned with her appearance more than anything, if her constant stops to brush off any and all dust was any implication. Out of the three, Naruto was obviously the only one who had dressed properly for the mission. He had on what looked to be rough training clothes, if the numerous sewn-up rips and worn-out colors were to be trusted. He had brought his greatsword, but he had seen that Naruto would most likely use his ability to fire slashes of chakra through it to carve trenches out of the ground. Besides Naruto, none of the team, excluding the two senseis, were dressed even remotely appropriate for the D-rank mission. The sinking feeling in Minato's gut only sank further. Upon hearing about what they would be doing, both Naruko and Menma started to protest loudly about how that kind of work was below them, which offended the client and led to a screaming match between the three of them. Meanwhile, Naruto hefted his greatsword and got to work, the chakra blades making quick work of the stiff, rocky soil of the farm. The farmer's wife was impressed at the speed and ease at which Naruto had plowed an entire field with his sword, so much so that she offered him extra pay. Naruto refused, citing how this was giving him practice in increasing the power of his chakra blades, which was probably the only reason that the farmer and his wife gave the two sensei the pay for the mission. Minato, having seen all that he needed to and probably all his pride could take, he headed back to Konoha, with all the proof needed that showed that the accusations were true. Time skipped to after the mission. Minato sighed as the team came in and rubbed his temples. After Kushina had given her report of the mission he nodded. Menma and Naruto, wait outside for a moment. Minato ordered, the rest of you, stay in here. The two Namikaze children smirked and left the room. After they had done so, Minato closed the door and activated the privacy seals. Now, Kushina, Manfred, give me the true debrief. Minato said, sighing. Kushina and Manfred proceeded to give a true debrief, one citing more than the other the complete lack of preparation and work ethic on the part of Menma and Naruto. At the end of it, Minato wanted to just find a corner and go cry in it. So the complaints were true then. He said, placing his head in his hands, Naruto, you are hereby exempt from D-rank missions until your teammates have made up the deficit they made. You are also entitled to their pay from those missions. I will also be punishing them myself. Kushina frowned, but nodded. As Hokage, Minato was obligated to punish ninja who neglected their duties, and as a father, he was obligated to punish his children for not doing what they were supposed to. Naruto shrugged, I don't really care about the money, but those two need lessons in humility and how to be humble. Manfred nodded, not just that, they need to learn the chain of command here. Minato turned to Manfred, as you are the Draenhoff representative, you are also entitled to the same time off. Manfred, again, nodded, I've been meaning to teach him some family techniques. Minato sighed, you two are good to go. Send my kids in on the way out. Naruto and Manfred left, sending the Namikaze brats in as they left. Time skip. Naruto and Manfred arrived in the training ground near the Kia monument. Manfred turned around and began his lesson. Here should be good enough to begin what I am going to teach you. This technique allows one to raise large amounts of undead specters, who will have many of the abilities they had in life. However, the spell is limited by the amount of souls you can bind to your will. It is through that bond that they stay in this plane. It is further limited in the fact that one can only summon spirits that were buried near to the area you are in or if you possess some of their intact remains. That second restriction means that someone who was cremated is nearly impossible to resurrect, as they were never buried and have no intact remains. This stone here acts as a catalyst, and we can use the spirits here. Now, what is the highest power spirit you can summon? Naruto smiled, I summoned you, didn't I? Manfred chuckled, alright Mr. Sass, try and summon some spirits. Spread your chakra over multiple spirits, no words are needed. Naruto concentrated, his chakra seeping into the various spirits in the Kia stone, who soon started manifesting, Uchihas, Hyugas, Inuzuka, Aburame, and two other spirits looked on proudly. Those two spirits were Rin Nohara and Tsukumo Hitaki. When Naruto opened his eyes, he was surprised to see the amount of people he had summoned. In front of him stood around 50 spirits, the majority of which wore Junin vests. All of them were smiling, even the stoic and emotionless Hyuga had grins. Good job, not only did you manage it on your first try, you managed to summon an amount only experienced necromancers can raise. Manfred praised, now, to dismiss them, focus on recalling your chakra. You will regain some of it, but most is lost in giving the spirits a physical form. Naruto nodded, and soon many of the 50 spirits were soon returned to the ethereal realm, with Rin, Tsukumo, and surprisingly Fugaku Uchiha. Manfred nodded, leave these three, they will be able to help you in our spar. This is the perfect time for a spar, as it will help you learn not to rely on your chakra. Even with Kurama in you, you can still run out. We will end this at first blood on either you or me. Manfred then got into a stance, drawing a hand-in-half sword. Come at me with intention to kill, I will do the same, but I am limiting my skills to that of an Anbu captain, so you should be challenged. Instead of responding, Naruto lowered himself into a stance, drawing his sword. The three spirits also drew weapons, one a sword, and two with kunai. No jutsu, that applies to your ability with your sword and to your allies. Manfred instructed. They all nodded, and with that, Manfred launched himself at them, starting the spar.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.